Christian Eucharist promises a lot and delivers very little. You have to believe. Faith is not necessary to experience what psychedelics have to teach. You don't have to believe. You can be as skeptical as you want. Famous ethnologist Merciliade called it the archaic techniques of ecstasy, and it certainly is archaic in the sense that it's probably our oldest religion, but it's much more than a religion. It's actually a set of practices for achieving altered states of consciousness, whether with the use of drugs or the use of other kinds of techniques like ecstatic drumming and sometimes self-flagellation, or sometimes, different types of, physical stress. But the basic idea of shamanism is to achieve an altered state of consciousness, and not simply to have the experience. The shaman actually uses the altered state to access a transpersonal realm, a realm of spirits or supernatural forces, which can maybe allies of some kind, which he or she can manipulate, communicate with, obtain information from, to help the community or an individual.
Shamans are medicine men, I guess, in Western parlance, and so shamanism is what shamans do. They beat drums, they take drugs, they dance, and they they cure people, or they attempt to cure people. They interpret dreams, they find lost objects.
It harkens back to a time when things like psychotherapy and medicine and magic and religion and all of these things weren't even, fully formed concepts. So the shaman kind of combines all of these roles of he's a priest and a doctor and a psychotherapist, and also often a poet and an artist and someone that gives expression to the cultural myth of the culture. So and I keep saying he, and that's, it should be clear there are shamanesses as well, or women shaman. It's not a gender-specific kind of thing. But the figure of the shaman is a, important spiritual figure in these non-traditional in these traditional societies, in these indigenous societies, respected and a little bit feared, because the shaman is the odd person. The shaman is the person who is in direct contact with the transpersonal and is kind of the interface for the culture and the rest of the people. He or she is the person that gets to actually dialogue and travel in these realms, and they often use psychotropic plants to do this. Not invariably, but quite often.
It's quite clear that different kinds of hallucinogenic plants and substances were used, including from the bufo toad. Peter first did some examination of this among the Olmec people. So this is before the classic Maya civilization, back around 1200 BC. And the bufo toad can be kind of a 5-MeO DMT can be extracted from the glands on the shoulder of the toad.
There's another compound out there called bufotenine, which was first discovered in frog skin, actually, and it's got some kind of psychoactivity. It's a little hard to really pin that down. But it's a naturally occurring, tryptamine as well, though. It's found in blood and brain and cerebrospinal fluid and urine, any body fluid in animals in which it's been looked for.
So they were clearly using psilocybin mushrooms. They were clearly using the 5-MeO-DMT extracted from the bufo toad, and possibly a more close analog of DMT itself. I mean, there's some discussion around the difference between 5-MeO-DMT and regular DMT, but actually modern explorers with these substances have reported that there are qualitatively different experiences, but both can be pretty soul-shaking. So I think within this context, then, you had a whole array of other hallucinogenic plants being used, the morning glory. The Mazatec Indians today, when Gordon Wasson visited the Mazatec and Mixe regions of Oaxaca in the 1950s, it started this whole revolution in understanding the scope and the depth of the sacred plants that were being used. So you have Salvia divinorum, for example, is a plant that was used by the Mazatec Indians and is still used today. That's also where the sacred mushroom cult, the psilocybin mushroom cult, was rediscovered, a place where the sacred mushroom cult apparently survived up until modern times.
Part of the fear that society at large has of psychedelic drugs is that the only framework that we have to process these experiences through in Western culture is that of competitive drinking. Competitive drinking is sort of the standard that we use to measure what it's like to alter consciousness. And I think the shamanistic perspective or shamanistic worldview can give us a new perspective on how to process these experiences and show how valuable that they can be. The shamanic perspective essentially would say that drugs are not the ideal way to alter your consciousness, and you shouldn't alter your consciousness with any of these types of substances until you at least first master altering your consciousness through other means, such as the use of drums, dancing, paying attention to your dreams.
There's all sorts of different ways of attaining altered states, through plants and drugs, through trance, meditation, hypnosis, drumming, starvation, fasting, unexhaustive exercise, all kinds of things. And in terms of an entheogen, what I would define as an entheogen, I'm not fond of the term because it kind of requires that you have a belief in theos, which is God or divinity. I think that the term psychedelic is just a bit more descriptive of what these drugs or plants, do or what they manifest. Psychedelic means mind manifesting. And one could argue that the phenomena one encounters on a psychedelic drug experience are either internal